Abuja is one of the most popular cities in Nigeria. It is the country's capital city and is the first city that was developed from scratch with a master plan. So, it is arguably the most orderly city in the country. As I pointed out in the introduction video, this channel is dedicated to promoting sustainable urban management of Nigerian cities. And what better city to start with than the country's capital, Abuja? Cities like Beijing in China, Helsinki in Finland, Paris in France, and Washington DC in USA have been known to record more successes in implementing sustainable urban planning practices than their sister cities. So, Abuja may just be the key to unlocking sustainable urban development for Nigeria. But don't take my word for it. In the opening chapter of Ortong's book, Capital Cities and Urban Sustainability, capital cities were referred to as innovators of sustainability policy and practice because they are unique hubs that host the national government, city governments, research communities, embassies and international community, corporations, national NGOs, professional associations, and the media. The accumulation of these sectors within the hub give these cities the ability to stimulate the process of developing sustainability solutions in ways that no other cities are able to achieve. Could this be the case for Abuja? In this video, we are going to explore a brief history of Abuja, the city's physical, social, and administrative structure, and quite a number of trivia facts about the city. The coming videos will also feature topics on Abuja's housing, mobility, and governance, so this will be a good reference point to understanding some of what will be discussed later on this channel. Before we go any further, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't, indicate your likeness for this video if you do like it, and leave any feedback in the comments. That said, welcome to Nigerian urbanism. The history of Abuja cannot be separated from the original capital city, Lagos, which was the colonial capital since the country's amalgamation in 1914 and through her independence in 1960. It was a major port city in Africa and a leading commercial and industrial center, attracting people countrywide and beyond. This resulted in rapid population growth that was unmatched by the provision of necessary and sufficient infrastructure, leading to urban challenges like housing shortage, unhygienic environment, poor drainage systems, and severe traffic congestion. Lagos was therefore considered to be incapable of functioning as a federal capital. In 1976, the federal government resolved to create a new capital city that is free of Lagos's problems. So, a federal capital territory known as Abuja was carved out of 4 existing states, Kaduna, Kwara, Niger, and Plateau, justified by a central location with high accessibility from all parts of Nigeria, the availability of adequate land and natural resources that can provide a base for urban development, and the potential to spur development in neighboring states and spread the development throughout the country. The Federal Capital Development Authority was thus established by the Federal Capital Territory Act of 1976, and the authority was charged with the responsibility of planning and overseeing the development of the FCT. One of the FCDA's first tasks was hosting what was referred to as a worldwide competitive bidding process to commission a planning firm to prepare a master plan for Abuja. Eventually, the International Planning Associates (IPA), a consortium of 3 American firms made up of Wallace, Roberts, McHarg, and Todd, WRMT, who were a group of architects, Archisystems International, which was a subsidiary of Howard Hughes Corporation, and Planning Research Corporation was selected as the master planner of Abuja. Their selection was in part because of WRMT's previous work in Washington, D.C., USA's capital city, where they had prepared a comprehensive landscape plan in furtherance to the L'Enfant original city master plan. After a process that involved data collection and review, city site selection, regional and city plan preparation with accompanying design and development standards manual, the IPA submitted a master plan to the FCDA, which was approved in 1979. From within the Federal Capital Territory, the FCT, An area was delineated as the Federal Capital City, the FCC, which was the city site and represented the city limits. All original inhabitants, existing residents, and indigenous villages within 5 kilometers of the FCC were to be resettled in other areas of the FCT or in neighboring states. The complications of that are a bit too complex to get into in this video, but some of the failures of that plan are evident in the indigenous villages that currently exist in some districts of Abuja. The FCC covered an area of about 555 square kilometers, less than 8% of the total FCT area of about 7,315 square kilometers. This is what differentiates the entire Federal Capital Territory from the city of Abuja itself, and it is why we have running jokes about people who live in places like Buari, Gwagwalada, or Nyanya not actually living in Abuja. The physical plan concept of Abuja can be described as pointing like a bow and arrow or staring like the human eye towards a focal point, which is the city's predominant natural landmark, Aso Rock. Side note, Aso Rock is the highest rock in Nigeria with a height of about 936 meters above sea level. This is often confused with Zuma Rock, which covers a larger land area, so it can be said to be a bigger rock, but has a lower peak height of about 725 meters above sea level. It also has a face. Tell me if this segue works. Speaking of phases, the Federal Capital City was planned to have 4 phases comprising of residential and non-residential districts and an international airport. The residential districts formed sectors that were conceived as self-sufficient, autonomous mini-cities, with each sector having all necessary facilities and services for residents within a sector center, and all primary services available at walking distance within neighborhoods. The non-residential districts are along the city spine, or the arrow if you stuck to the bow and arrow visualization. These are the administrative district, also known as the Three Arms Zone, the central business district, also known as the central area, the recreational district or Kukwaba, which has the National Stadium and Amusement Park, the institutional districts, and the industrial districts. The detailed site development plan for the central area was designed by a well-known Japanese architect called Kenzo Tange. This too is often a cause of confusion, with several sources wrongly stating that Kenzo Tange prepared the entire city master plan. The city's major circulation routes also help define the physical structure. They include the Outer Northern Expressway or ONEX, the Outer Southern Expressway or OSEX, the Inner Northern Expressway or INEX, and the Inner Southern Expressway or ISEX. You may hear some people pronounce these as INEX or ISEX, but I guess there's no rule to how this should be pronounced. They also include the ring roads, which define the phases, the parkways, which run through sectors, and the transitways, which is the transportation route for the planned Abuja metro system. Altogether, these can be considered to be the skeletal system of the city, and it is the main physical structure that the city does not tamper with, regardless of whatever changes have been made to the master plan, such as the addition of a phase 5 within the city belly, land use changes within the city, and urban sprawl beyond the city limits. The social structure of Abuja has been largely influenced by the implementation of its physical plan. The plan envisaged that the phases will be developed, serviced, and inhabited sequentially for a population of 3.2 million people. However, only phase 1 has attained a significant level of infrastructure development. Phase 2 has pockets of infrastructure development, and phase 3's development is riddled with a lot of informality. As a result of the relatively higher level of infrastructure in phase 1, residential districts there have become very expensive and exclusive to the well-to-do. This is one of Abuja's major urban problems: housing availability and affordability. It is so much a problem that a former minister of the FCT is alleged to have said that Abuja is not a city for the poor. An incorrect statement if one actually studies the city master plan. But despite having partial to no major infrastructure, urbanization continued in other phases with the growth of informal settlements, another of the city's major urban problem, most notably in Lugbe, which we shall discuss more in depth in another video. People who live in other phases mostly rely on the services and economic opportunities in phase 1 and more recently phase 2, so they commute into these phases to work, learn or play on a daily basis, taking the daytime population of the city to over 7 million. This defeats the purpose of the city's sectors, which were supposed to function self sustainably with residents living, working, schooling, and recreating within their sector, except for higher order service needs. It is the source of yet another major urban problem: traffic congestion in the city entry routes and major intersections during peak hours, because the infrastructure in each phase and the sectors in them was planned to serve the people living in that phase. The combination of these problems has cumulated into a city with poor social mix and urban intensity. The districts in some phases of the city are highly populated during the day by people who come in for different reasons, but feel empty at night and during the weekends when left mostly to the people who actually live in the districts. Perhaps this is also a reflection of the lack of mixed use districts from the initial plan, with districts planned either as mainly residential or non residential. The demand for commercial and other uses within residential districts is currently most visible in Wuse 2 district, where residential land uses along busy routes are being converted to commercial uses. For what it's worth, this has indeed made Wuse 2 the most vibrant district in Abuja, with high accessibility to a variety of non-residential services and a bustling nightlife. In the next video, we will explore the different districts of Abuja to more detail. The administrative and governance structure of Abuja is quite complex and unique, as the city isn't governed like cities in other states of the country. Recall that the Federal Capital Development Authority was created in 1976 to oversee the infrastructure and physical development of FCT. The focus of the FCDA is on planning, design, and construction of the city's physical environment. Under the FCDA, departments such as engineering for infrastructure designs and construction, urban and regional planning for land use zoning, mapping and surveying for geographic data collection and distribution, resettlement and compensation, and more operate. However, the city in its entirety is also managed through the Federal Capital Territory Administration, the FCTA, headed by a minister who is appointed by the country's president and assisted by a permanent secretary, like other federal ministries in the country. The FCDA comprises its own sets of different secretariats, departments, and agencies. In some cases, the functions overlap between the FCDA and the departments of the FCTA. For example, the Abuja Geographic Information System (AGIS) of the FCTA performs similar statutory function as the Survey and Mapping Department of the FCDA. In other cases, their functions are complementary. For example, the Development Control Department of the FCTA works to ensure that the zoning and land use plans prepared or approved by the Urban and Regional Planning Department of the FCDA are not abused by developers. One other branch of the FCTA that is very relevant to urban management is the Abuja Metropolitan Management Council (AMMC), which is responsible for the efficient running and operation of municipal services within the FCT. If you are confused, don't feel alone, because it's quite difficult to draw clear lines between the many administrative branches of the FCT. Remember still that some of these secretariats, departments, and agencies have scope of services that cover the entire Federal Capital Territory, while some are limited to the Federal Capital City. If you have any further information that can clarify just how the city is managed, kindly share them in the comments. I'll be happy to learn from you too. Meanwhile, here's an organogram that tries to capture the entire FCT administrative structure. Construction of Abuja started in the early 1980s, coinciding with Nigeria's oil boom, a period when the country's GDP was exceedingly boosted by a sharp increase in global oil prices. Perhaps this is why Phase 1 got to enjoy its level of infrastructure development. But about 4 decades later, the city still seems to be a huge construction site, as the implementation of the Abuja Master Plan has been slow and staggered, and many developments that should have become iconic landmarks remain incomplete or yet to be functional. For example, construction of the World Trade Center started in 2010. Since that time, only 2 out of the 7 planned towers have been topped out. For comparison, when its construction started, land was still being reclaimed from the Atlantic Ocean for Eco Atlantic in Lagos, which has now topped out 4 towers, with several others ahead of the construction stage of the other World Trade Center towers. Another example is the Abuja Millennium Tower and Cultural Center, where construction started in 2006. With a height of about 170 meters, the Millennium Tower is the tallest man-made structure in Nigeria, only closely followed by the NACOM building in Lagos, which is about 160 meters high. But the tower and the accompanying cultural center is still under construction and has been abandoned for years due to financial complications. The many abandoned buildings in the city have been identified by different researchers as blind spots for criminal activity or hideaways. Nonetheless, Abuja can still boast of iconic or landmark buildings like the Central Bank of Nigeria headquarters, the NNPC headquarters, and the National Mosque, among others. The city also consists of fine low-density neighborhoods with a booming real estate sector on one hand and high-density slums and squatter settlements within and around the city on the other. Being a much newer city, Abuja does not have the historic or cultural value of cities like Lagos, Kano, or Ibadan, but it thrives due to the perceived availability of political wealth, the relative safety compared to other states in the northern region of the country, and the availability of arguably the best level of infrastructure, planning, and urban management by Nigerian standards. While some of the problems of Lagos, which Abuja was made to be free from, are beginning to stick their heads out from the pit, the city still holds a lot of potential as far as physical development is concerned, and it is only beginning to scratch the surface in building and exploring its socio-economic capital. In other videos, we are going to explore some of the features of Abuja and talk about different issues and prospects for the city. In the meantime, I hope that this video has provided sufficient background information about the city profile of Abuja. If you enjoyed this content, kindly subscribe to Nigerian Urbanism, as we will be providing similar content going forward. Thank you for watching. See you next time.